What's up, everybody? This is the 8th episode of Kofe Talk, a podcast in which we connect you with an individual from the sports community and talk over a cup of coffee. Our next guest is a former intern of mine, currently the coordinator of marketing operations at Major League Baseball, Melanie McHugh. Melanie, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. So excited to be here and give us a chance to reconnect. It's been a while.
I want you to just walk me through how you went from being social media and creative intern for the Brooklyn Cyclones to now being the coordinator of marketing operations at MLB.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting road from the Cyclones to the commissioner's office. But yeah, so I interned with you and Billy, who I adore, at the Cyclones this summer going into my senior year of college.
Yep.
Was lucky enough that he gave me a shot doing the social media. I didn't have any experience. I was a student athlete. I was playing lacrosse at Elon at the time, but my resume was pretty fair. So always grateful for you and Billy for that experience. It definitely jump-started a career that I'm extremely grateful to have. I graduated then in 2018 with my major in strategic communications, and then sport and event and psychology minor. So I knew I wanted to work in sports. Super cliche, I know, but having been an athlete my whole life and having loved sports, I just knew that if I was doing something in the world of sports, I at the very least wouldn't hate my day to day. This is where I feel the most at home, and with people that I connect to most has always been in sports. So that kind of drove my job search my senior year.
Okay.
Something that I always preach to people is internships, even after you graduate. So I looked at a whole slew of places, teams, leagues, networks, you name it, I was applying to it. I found something with Major League Baseball that was basically, it was the most vague job posting you've ever seen. It just said marketing. I didn't even study marketing. So sure. I was like, this is not going to work, but screw it. What do I have to lose? Let me just apply. A few days later, I got contacted that they would like to set up a phone interview. I ended up interviewing with my now good friend, Casey Evans, who runs the some of the creative initiatives for the league. And she was a student athlete too. So I kind of worked that angle, but she, again, just gave me a shot and I was so grateful. I then started about a week after graduation. So I had little summer, but I was so excited about it. And I was basically a social media intern again, and I loved it. I was doing a whole slew of different things with player posts and tracking different, social media initiatives we had going on at the time. Pretty much you name it, I was doing it. And then I bopped around a little bit. I then got into the influencer space and started working for Catherine Buckles, who heads up the celebrity initiatives for the league, all under the umbrella of marketing. And then I ended up being an intern. So I was an intern for 14 going on 15 months. So it was a long time. It was more than a year of internship. It was a paid internship. So luckily I was able to make it work and commuting from home and doing all the things, but I ended up getting a full-time position finally with marketing operations. And I could speak more about that. It's a very interesting role, kind of get to work on a whole myriad of projects.
Posh of whatever is
my favorite thing. It's like I'm constantly just like joining calls where it's like, all right, there's this project. I would have never known that some of these things were going on if I was just pigeonholed to one group. But being in operations, it's awesome because everyone needs help with XYZ, whether that's legal, finance, moving things along, boots on the ground stuff. I've been able to travel to a bunch of cool places. So it's been great. So then I've been full-time since last August, which feels crazy. I feel like I'm so new, but I guess I've been there for a while too. It's been a wild ride, but Yeah, very grateful for how it all netted out.
I think the coolest thing about this story is that you've jumped from intern at MLB to full time. To me, that just speaks to who you are as a person and the mentality that you carry as you do your work. I think a lot of individuals probably would have imploded not having that full-time position for 14 months. And there's pressures to that, right? Like I'm sure there were outsiders, your peers in that scenario saying like, well, maybe you should be looking here, or maybe you should be doing this, parents, whatever it may be. And you stayed patient and just continue to work your tail off and network with the right people within the organization, and then you landed that full-time role. Can you walk me through this time a little bit, and did you ever deal with self-doubt as you were navigating this process?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. So for me, I'm a big trust the process kind of person in pretty much everything I do. So how it kind of all went down was, it was a summer internship. So I was with a lot of undergrads, and it was a 3-month period because that's, when people would be going back to school. Obviously, sure. I did not go back to school. So then it was a conversation with my manager about, okay, we would love to extend you, which for me was fantastic news. I didn't want a job search. I loved what
please.
I loved the environment. I was like, please, whatever time you can give me. And so then they extended me through the end of the season. So that brought me to about, October. We were in the fall, and then reassessed. Okay, so we'll extend you to the end of the year. So I was like, okay. So by then, it had been 6 months, I guess, or so. So from the summer to the end of the calendar year of working, of learning a lot, of meeting such amazing people, my manager included. And she was part of the reason why, when there were such outside external factors and the internal doubts that started to settle in, I not only trusted myself, and I also trusted the people around me, which is huge. And I, am biased because I love the people I work with, and I think they're the best people on earth. But it's so true that your work is 90% the people and 10% the actual work. So
for sure,
when I had those moments of like, what am I doing wrong? Or not even that, what can I be doing better? I'm so hard on myself innately, that it was hard to reconcile what would the holdup was, right? And there's not much that really can be said in terms of like the HR process and all these things, so people like wanted to tell me, but couldn't. So it was a very tough time. Right out of college, all my friends got jobs, whether it was in finance, PR, whatever it was. Maybe it took them a couple months, but they weren't starting as an intern. They were starting with a salary. Maybe it was a meager salary, but it was a salary. And so I didn't have that experience. And it was definitely tough when you had certain people being like, you're coming up on 1 year being an intern. What's your move? What are you going to do? And I'm like, I'm having a great time. I'm enjoying myself. That feels like the top thing. Also, I have to, acknowledge the privilege of being able to live off of a intern salary. I was able to stay at home.
Right.
My parents didn't kick me out. I was able to stay at home, commute, pocket the intern salary that I had. And yeah, so I'm forever grateful that I stayed the course, but it was not without certain doubts. And I'm just very grateful that I, again, trusted the process and, didn't give up just because it seemed like this wasn't quote unquote what people should do.
There's 2 points to that I think are amazing, is the building of relationships as you're working and going through your job. I think you can be extremely talented. And I believe that if you're not cultivating those strong, meaningful relationships along the way, and you said you were being very transparent with your bosses and what your goals were and what you wanted to do, if you're not building those meaningful relationships, those individuals are not going to pull you in the right direction or push your trajectory if you just have a surface level connection with them. And I love how you talk about the process. Your mentality is just like the biggest differentiator. During my time in football, I had my doubts. The job is extremely demanding in social media and marketing. And this, you don't really ever get to turn off. You're always working, and very early on, I would ask myself, like, am I making the right decisions? Am I moving in a direction to get me to where I wanted to go? And somewhere during that time, I began to just like surrender the outcome, really began to focus on that process, and really fell in love with that. The process of working towards just getting that 1% better every single day is the only thing that matters. Everything else is super subjective.
And it's important to keep in mind that other people, whether it's parents and friends, and whether they're in the same industry as you or they are not, they have they have your best interests in mind, but they don't know what the day to day is like. And
For sure.
I look back on that time and it's like, yes, I was an intern for so long, but I had, the opportunity to move around within my internship, which was something that was was so valuable once I did land the job, because I can go into this a little bit more, but marketing operations is you handle projects with every single group of marketing, whether it's a player social project where we're trying to get, players on a podcast, or to go to the Grammys, or, it could range from so many different things. It could be celebrity softball, or, one of our boots on the ground events. But being able to have that background of social media, what our goals are, having the experience while I was an intern doing all of the things possible and getting my hands in as much as possible. Now, being in a different area of marketing, I'm able to have a much deeper understanding of what our goals are and what we're trying to achieve, instead of just taking it for a surface level and just having to go off of what people tell me. I can kind of pull back on my own experiences, and I think that's been a huge advantage.
So Melanie, tell me what you're doing more day to day. Like, give me and the listeners some more information on what your position entails. I've had a lot of guests on thus far that are more on the communication and content creation side of things, and I was extremely excited to get you on because you're in more of that operational role, and I think it gives our listeners a much broader view on the different types of positions that are out there.
The hardest question is always, what do you do for work? Because
everything.
I could go on a tangent in about 100 different directions, but I've been asked it a couple times though, so I'm going to do my best to answer. Really, when it comes down to it, it changes depending on what's going on in the year. So for example, before we started recording, we were talking about how this is spring training time. We're recording this, in the end of February, beginning of March. We had all the players reporting. So right now, my focus is, what do we need to capture from a content side? So whether that's the opening day commercial spots, is it, the Spanish social, what do they need? So right now I'm organizing all this spring training requests for the players, trying to pull as much time as possible. Obviously, we've never been in a pandemic for spring training before. Whole new.
There's not a guide to this.
I'm like, hey boss, how do we handle this? He's like, your guess is as good as mine. So, but then we now are looking towards a potential all-star game, right? We are greenlit to go full steam ahead. Who knows what the world's going to be like this summer, but we got to start planning. So that means celebrity softball preparations are in order. We're thinking about the photo shoots that are going to be happening in Atlanta this year for All-Star Week. Not even knowing if I'm going to be able to travel, who knows, but there are preparations to be made for everything. And, our mantra is like, let's try to do the most. And we get told all the time, oh, it can't happen, pare it back, but we want to be as prepared as possible. So what that means on a day-to-day basis is really doing all the behind the scenes stuff. That's kind of how I like to look at it. It is, we're doing YouTube series with former softball player Lauren Chamberlain on a show called Stacked. So for that, who is handling the contract for Lauren? Me. Who is handling, her stipends, her travel, all of these things. That's where operations comes into play. And it's not always very glamorous at all. I'm not behind the camera shooting it. I'm not boots on the ground, but we're the ones who kind of we like to say we're the ones who get shit done, essentially.
Yeah, you're the glue that like makes sure all the pieces come together. And at the end of the day,
people want to get paid. We have an artist we did like a Black History Month artist series. Who's paying these guys? Who's talking to finance? Who's talking to legal? Who's getting clearances on logos? Who's doing all those things that people really don't think about? And that kind of falls on us. Sometimes I'm thinking like, oh gosh, my whole day is filled with submitting contract requests. And, I'm not a lawyer. I don't speak legalese, but that's kind of one of the hats that I have to wear sometimes. And it's always the most rewarding when you see these things come to fruition, even though it might not be your project, to see all of the things happening because of your work. And sometimes, like I said, it's not very glamorous, but you get it to where it needs to be. And that kind of all makes it so worth it for me. But yeah, I have a whole bunch of different projects all going at the same time. And it's very exciting.
As you started working in this full-time role, and maybe you did some of it as an intern, you weren't doing these tasks with the Brooklyn Cyclones, right? You were more on like the creative and social side. So how have you developed into this role? And, was it a lot of behind the scenes of studying up and making sure that you were prepared? Have you failed and had to come back and like recalibrate what you were doing to get back on the, straight path? Like what's that been like?
That's a great question. There's a lot there. I think it's a whole combination of things. Yeah. First of all, I think you have to, just in a general sense, no matter what you're doing, I think it's really important to get in a position in your career that somewhat aligns with not only what you want to do, but what kind of person you are. And when things get tough, you have to rely on just like who you are as a person and your personality traits. Like, are you super creative minded, or are you super type A, check all the boxes, all that kind of stuff? But when it comes down to it, you're in these stressful situations, that is super important. And I tend to be less of the creative and more of the logistics. And
I have an argument for this statement in a second, but go ahead and keep going.
Gosh. Well, yeah, you knew me in a different lifetime. That is very, very true.
I agree with you. I think there's people that are type A, and then there's people that are creative. People who work in operations, the ones that are successful are the ones that can think creatively to problem solve through different situations.
And it's that adaptability, I think, is key in almost every situation
sure.
that I have on my plate. So yes, when I say creative in the sense of what you might think of as a creative, like you have content creators on, right?
Graphics,
all these things. And I look at those people and I am like, how do you do that? That is unbelievable. I like the team of graphic designers. You probably see I repost them to my Instagram story all the time. I am just blown away by that, creativity in a more, I guess you could say, traditional sense, what you might think of as a creative. But yeah, I didn't go into this job, my internship or my actual job, with any sort of training. Yeah. Like not even a week where they're like, okay, here's how you submit a contract. Here's how you do this. Here's what's important for, an opening day commercial. I knew nothing. And it was a little bit daunting, I'm not gonna lie, but for me, the way my career path has gone, I've been kind of thrown, whether it's in Cyclones with Billy, he was just kind of like, here are the social media passwords, go do some stuff. I was like, okay. But then now at the league, it's kind of like, all right, so this is what we have to get done. I'll CC you on all the emails so you can get a feel for it yourself. So it was a lot of teaching myself what we're looking for, what questions to ask is always such an important thing, because those are critical. Like, are we sure we have the money for this, is one that I always love to ask.
Yeah, I know.
The budget is approved. There are certain things that you learn just on experience, because people are like, oh, you know what? We don't have a budget approved for this. We're like, all right, so not much that can be done.
We'll go back to square one. Throw the rest of this away.
Later. Yeah. Loop me in when we got money and then we'll be good. But yeah, no, it's a lot of learning on the job. Obviously, as things come up, the what website to use or what, you know, the nitty gritty of the things. My boss and my managers have been so incredible with just like, there's no stupid questions. Come to us with anything. If you're second guessing yourself, come to us. And that's kind of how I've been able to build confidence to take on projects. That I sometimes, you know, imposter syndrome is real. Sometimes I'm like, I have no business being a part of this. I don't know how to produce like a radio spot for like your home run derby. What am I doing? I don't know. But it's one, having like the support system of people around you that you know that you're not actually alone in this, even though sometimes it could feel a little bit daunting when all these like specs and these and all this like verbiage that you've never seen before, and like, what format should we have this in? I have literally no idea. But the people around me, there's never been a day where I'm like, oh shit, I shouldn't have asked that. I should have known that. And you know, your internal battles can of course creep in, and all your doubts and all these things, but it's really been so great to just been able to, you know, learn on the job, go back to the people around me and have that support to not be like, oh shit, I'm like left on an island and everyone wants me to fail.
For sure. Yeah.
I'm pretty lucky.
We talk about imposter syndrome within our company all the time because I think, you know, just that doubt always creeps in. And I don't think anybody is necessarily qualified for the position that they take on. I mean, that's just like unrealistic. There's going to be shit that pops up that you're just like, nobody's dealt with this before, or maybe people have, but maybe not in the building, and you have to reach out to outside resources to get some information and figure out how to navigate through those waters. And it's funny that you bring this up, like the money thing, because I legitimately recently pitched this big idea.
Yeah.
And I was so fired up about it. I'm like, this is going to be the greatest, you know, piece of work that I've put together yet. I started calling around and budgeting it out. It was like not even on the stratosphere of being able to get done within the budget that we had. And this is where this new position that I've been in has taught me to be more well-rounded and find creative solutions from an operational standpoint. Is how do you take the budget that you are then given and still produce a campaign that fits that structure and can really still make noise and push the needle to the direction you need to go.
There's nothing more humbling than being like, shit, this is not gonna work. But you know, in my experience, it's always been like, let's just prep as much as possible and get it to a point where if we are approved, we can just go. Yeah. So there's constantly, sometimes you're working on things like, is this even going to happen? I don't know. Another big humbler for everyone. I don't know if humbler is a word. A big humbling.
Humble piece of pie.
Like the pandemic, no one's dealt with this before. No one, like you said earlier, has any sort of rule book. So in a sense, it's kind of a you know, trying to see the flip side of it all. It's an opportunity to think super creatively of how to get shit done. Can we, if we want to have, you know, this celebrity guest somewhere, how does that work? Will it be remote? Can we send a team of videographers to someone's house to record something?
Right.
Like, we've had to think of things so creatively. And even the most experienced people that I work with who have been like directors on projects and write the scripts for the commercials, like these incredibly talented people, we all look around sometimes and are like, how is this going to get done?
Who has the answer for this?
We don't have enough time. We don't have enough time. We don't know what's going on. We don't know if this person has COVID. Like the amount of, you know, question marks are just never ending. But it's made it a more interesting, a more, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes in those chaotic situations, the adrenaline rush that like you get in dealing with some of those issues or things that pop up, it's the best feeling in the world. I mean, I love getting like backed up against the wall and having to try to figure out like what my next, you know, chess move is to navigate through it. And I think that's always so much fun. So I have two final questions for you. First one is, I want to hear a memory from your career that stands out the most. Like, what is something that's happened that you're like, maybe people won't even believe that this is a real thing?
I feel like you're asking this knowing the answer.
This
Okay.
might have been built in for a specific reason.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's bring it back a couple of years. Brooklyn Cyclones. As we've said, social media intern, ran around, did a lot of stuff. I was in I was in the clubhouse. Sometimes I was on the field, sometimes running out with the between innings games. The one game that we always played was, what was it? Race the Flash. Something.
Yeah, it was when the freeze thing started.
Yeah. So that was a constant, and
Yep.
I was doing my thing. I was put myself in the position of the finish line, I'll say, for this race. So it was a packed, Cyclones always show up with their fans. So it was a packed house, middle of the summer. I'm hanging out. I have my phones up with all ready to go. And it just so happened that who was racing the Flash that day was a fellow intern of mine in a green morph suit. So, those, I've never been in one. To my defense, I don't know if you could see. I assume that you could. Apparently, you can't see very well in those things. Okay, so
not the best.
I'm trying to work not the best. I'm trying to work my angles. I'm trying to get, close to where he's gonna run by. Now
you're trying to do your job in the right way. You're trying to get the shot. I mean, shit.
It was just another day in the job, trying to do my best. All of a sudden, he's running towards me. He's running like not very straight. I should have noticed this. I should have gotten out of the way. I think we all know where this is going now. But he was running a little bit like a snake. And all of a sudden, he decks me. Absolutely decks me. And this is right in front of the bullpen. I don't even remember him hitting me, but I remember hearing all of the pitchers just say, "Oh shit." Everyone was jaw to the floor. Oh my God, is she concussed? What's happening? This is insane. So I actually have that video still on my phone.
You gotta send that to me so I
will send it to you. It is, and you're gonna watch this video being like, how does this girl not think that she's about to get hit? Because I was straight up woohoo, recording, so intent on just staring at what was happening through the phone that I didn't realize what was happening in real life.
Yeah.
And got completely decked. I think it was the kid, Lucas, right? I think it was Lucas in the morph suit. He felt terrible about it. I was like, you couldn't see. It's really on me. But that was an insane thing. They said in the loudspeakers, ooh, down goes the intern. It was nuts. And then there was I remember the next day I went into work. I was fine, by the way, but I was like, it's fine. I played lacrosse. Don't worry about me.
I'm good.
I'm fine. My head's not spinning at all. Don't worry about it. The next day I go into work and Billy's like, Mel, you got to get in here. And he pulled up an article recap of the game. Because of course we were always doing a theme night. There were always articles being written about all the cool shit that we did there. And, one paragraph in, it was and in the middle of the inning during the race, the intern gets absolutely decked. And I was like, this is my claim to fame. I hope
this is what I wanted the press to say.
Right, exactly. Don't worry about it. But yeah, it was social media intern gets hurt. And it was okay, nothing else. Then it was and they averaged this many fans. I was like, all right, at least I got one sentence where people were like, hope she's okay.
I think you didn't hold up the game. So that was the good side of it, right? You got hit, you bounced right up, and you just
I was just hiding my face, getting off the field now. Okay, goodbye. I don't even know. I think I just hopped the fence and just went inside to the offices and was like, what just happened? I just love looking back on that time, honestly. It was just and just listening to the episode with Billy, which was amazing. Like I will always cherish those times for sure. But that was crazy. And I've been able to do a bunch of fun stuff in my short time now with the league. But that when I look back at my quote unquote sports career, I was like, I still can't believe that happened. That was insane. But
That's
minor league baseball, baby. That's what happens. You never know.
I mean, minor league baseball, I'll forever say this. It is the best first job out of school or internship. If you could work in minor league baseball, even if it's just for fun, the people and the connections that you're going to make is incredible. So final question, who would you like to see on this podcast?
Okay. Well, you know me, so I did my research and knew this question was coming.
Okay.
How pie in the sky can I be? I have a couple different answers. I am fascinated by the different routes, obviously, to where people get where they are, right? Okay. So the most interesting human in sports right now for me is Kim Ng of the Marlins. Okay. First, yeah, she is just absolutely phenomenal. She's the first manager of a MLB club.
Yeah.
I've been able to listen to her speak a couple times now. She is absolutely phenomenal. The advice she gives, the way she carries herself, she's just the coolest. So do your homework, but no, that would be an unbelievable person to just have speak anywhere at any time. But yeah, I think you could do it. I think you shoot for the stars.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'm going to definitely use you as a connection in making this happen. So Melanie, I appreciate it. I love getting to hear your story and thank you so much for jumping on Kofe Talk and talking through what you're doing now. Really, really appreciate it. And looking forward to, seeing what you're doing in All-Stars game and everything that you're doing moving forward.
Thanks so much for having me. This was so fun.